What's your name?
I'm Jim Grayson.
And what company do you work for?
I work for Pyrotek.
Pyrotek.
Yes.
Okay, I understand that you've been working for 39 years in the aluminum industry.
39 years. I started with Reynolds Metals Company in September of '76.
And what are the kinds of jobs that you've had? What do you generally do?
Well,
what have you done?
Actually, when I went to work for Reynolds, I was attending university. And the job was so good that I left the university and took a job as an hourly employee. In those days, very few of those kind of jobs came open, and the interview line stretched for over a mile.
And what kind of a job was that?
I went in as a production worker, and I started. I was an hourly employee about 4 years. And I did almost every job in the pot room in a cast house.
It was a cast house?
Cast house primarily. And so I tell people I was born and raised in a cast house. So after that I took a supervisor's job. Reynolds, that plant was an older plant built in 1953. And I've been there almost 10 years, and they closed the plant due to the power cost versus the primary aluminum. I left there, and then I went to...
Okay, those are continuing...
Yeah. So closed the plant, and so I took a job with Alumax Mill Products in Texarkana.
Okay.
I went in there. It was a greenfield startup, and I went in as a lead production supervisor. It's kind of a change in things. You go work in a plant where most of the people are as old as your father, and then at Alumax Texarkana, we hired people, most of them off the street. So most of the people were several years younger than I was, with no experience. So that was an eye-opening educational experience. After 4 years there, I was a casting manager. So from there, after 10 years, the plant was struggling financially. I was a little worried, and I took a job as a casting manager at Narandal in Scottsboro, Alabama. It's ingot and rolling, integrated rolling plant.
So have you always worked for aluminum production companies?
Well, until I went to work for Pyrotek. I was at Narandal for 5 years, and they sold that plant. And I was concerned about the new ownership, which proved true because the plant only ran 2.5 years after I left. But I had a job offer with Metallics, who's now was acquired by Pyrotek. Mm-hmm. So the last 16 years, I've been in sales and product development.
Well, it must be great for Pyrotek to have someone who knows the cast house from the inside.
Well, I think we actually have several. It's one strength of Pyrotek. It's the people. Pyrotek, I'm very impressed with the.
What does Pyrotek do?
Well, Pyrotek, they do several things. They have a myriad of products and consumables for the metals. We do things for sound guard. We do things for glass and hearth. But the core business is aluminum. And we also have the engineered equipment group, of which I'm a part of. And we have...
Now, is that large equipment or is that products used?
No, it's fairly capital. No, this is capital. Most of it's capital.
Okay.
And I'm involved with electromagnetic pumping systems. We have several different designs. I'm the sales manager for North America for SNF. And I'm also involved with chip melting. We've developed our own chip processing system. And we have the pumps and the vortexes, and we have a world-class system to optimize recovery of light gauge metal.
And so part of your job has been developing some of this equipment?
Yes. Yeah.
And is there some that you're particularly proud of, or they're innovative?
Yeah, one is a joint effort by several of us, but primarily started with myself and my colleague Chris Ville, who's an engineer in our Solon facility. And we've developed a chip dryer. It's our patents, Pyrotek's patents. And right now, the first one will run 1 ton an hour, so it's for the foundry industry. But we've incorporated a thermal oxidizer into the system. So it's a fairly compact system, not a lot of pain to install it. And we can take the chips down to almost perfectly dry, 0.1%.
So where would this be used in what kind of plants?
Anywhere where they generate light gauge metal, like chips. Chips are a very high surface to weight ratio, and the hotter the chip gets, the thicker the oxide. And it's a drop of aluminum surrounded by an oxide skin. So the hotter the chip gets, the thicker the oxide skin gets. It's non-recoverable metal. Secondly, the thicker the oxide skin gets, the greater the surface tension of that oxide skin. So now the drop of metal, when it melts, doesn't have enough weight to overcome the surface tension of that oxide skin. And it continues to oxidize, so the recovery, the yield on running chips a certain way is very poor. When we dry the chip completely, the other second thing is any contaminant, whether it be oil, cutting fluids, on a chip, when it's introduced into the molten bath, you lose the cutting fluid immediately, the same as if you take it off in a dryer. But because you burn it off in the bath, it causes the bath to percolate and it generates extra oxides. Some of our tests show that for every 1% cutting fluid that's burned in the bath, we generate an extra 2% oxides.
Okay.
So our systems completely remove the contaminants, and we have a vortex system that submerges the chip instantly. So there's no air, so the oxide skin doesn't grow. So we get a maximum recovery. We've seen recoveries on scalper chips up to 98%, and 95% yield is not uncommon.
Well, with that kind of recovery numbers, it must be a successful product right now.
Yeah, we're very proud of that product.
So I know that recently Pyrotek put on a conference with Lifestuff.
Yes.
And was that the first time such a users conference was put on?
With Pyrotek and Lifestuff. My plant days, I've attended a few of the Lifestuff users conferences, but this is the first time that there's been a partnership with that case.
Now that's something that only people who have that existing equipment could attend?
Only people that had Lifestuff equipment.
And it's a learning opportunity.
Exactly.
And you presented a paper there?
I had a co-presented. I presented with Illumicast, Sean Hamer, and one of his young engineers, Octavio Sanchez.
And what was the title of that?
It was we put an underfloor stirring system, electromagnetic stirring system in their furnace. They have 4 furnaces. We had 2 underfloor stirring systems, and each pair of furnaces shared a stirrer, and we moved back and forth in the furnaces with a scissors lift and a mobile scissors lift on tracks. And so what the paper consisted of was the selection of the system, our developmental process of the system, their installation of the system, and then I worked with Octavio and we to collect data. And we had, for 4 furnaces, we got 30 data points for each furnace, both before and after the stir. We looked at productivity and cycle time. We looked at melt loss and energy consumption. Those were the top 3. And sum total, melt loss, energy consumption, and productivity was a model that I developed on a hypothetical model payback, because I wasn't going to ask Illumicast for their conversion cost. In other words, what does it cost to take this pile of scrap, melt it, and make a billet? And I used 5 cents a pound on the conversion cost based on the production gains. Then we divided the spending back into the new number, and it showed for a year, it showed almost $1.3 million savings. Sum total, dross, energy, we had a $1.6 million savings for a year on the 4 furnaces.
Well, is it normal for you to, after you install equipment in a plant, to stick around basically and make sure that it's working well, or even go as far as you did?
Absolutely. We do an extensive training program, not only on the pumps or the stirrers. We have the EMP pump. We have our underfloor stirrer. We have something new in development right now. I can't talk about, but a lot of
what area?
But the operator training, we not only cover how to run the equipment, but we teach the operators how the furnace works, the best way to charge it, what creates problems as far as quality or efficiency, We talk about proper charging practices. We cover safety and how all this interacts with our equipment. And there's been cases where a year, 2 years later, the customer has several new employees, and they'll call, we'll go back and retrain.
How did that particular project go in terms of, was it a smooth installation, or what kinds
For the
of
most
things
part,
happened?
yes. For the most part, yes. There were, a couple of electronic bugs, some things like that, but there was no major issues.
Well, I think you're probably going to be the person that I speak today with who's worked in the industry the longest. And you certainly deserve congratulations for that. Have you enjoyed your career in the industry?
I really have. They always say the cast house manager's job is the hottest seat in the plant. But the last 16 years with Metallics and Pyrotek have been absolutely the most enjoyable part. And I'll say this for Pyrotek. They've got an amazing group of people. And the one philosophical thing I like the most that comes from the top is the integrity and the honesty. And Alan Roy and Don Ting preach integrity and honesty. And I was raised that way. So I appreciate, but I've never worried about losing my job for being honest.
Well, I very much appreciate your honesty here today, and thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it.